It is Ruth, but
Did we just lose Ian?
Hi, everybody. I believe we did lose Ian, so we'll give him a moment to join back.
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
And my team is joining, so ready to go.
my apologies. I am now back. Zoom decided to kick me out not once but twice. So we're more than ready to go whenever you are ready to go, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. It is now 1:01 p.m., so I will call the meeting to order. Do we have a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda, please? Okay, moved by River and seconded by Councillor Tozo. All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you very much. Moving on. Confirmation.
Councillor, you are on mute.
I'm not sure what happened there. Sorry. I am a big fan of Zoom as well, Mr. Clerk. Okay, confirmation of the minutes. That the minutes of Housing and Homelessness Advisory Committee number 01-2024 held Thursday, December 14th, 2023 be approved. Can I have a mover for that, please? Mrs. Collier and seconder, Mr. Clark. Thank you very much. All those in favor? And that is approved. Okay. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. There are no delegations. There are no briefings. We move on to business. So we have item A, Housing and Homelessness Advisory Committee input request for 2024-2025 work items. The report has been attached. Is there any comments from staff? We'll start with staff. Are there anything?
Thank you. Maybe through you, Chair, if I can just introduce this and maybe start like what and I know it has been reiterated in the report. I know the chair and staff have met to discuss this prior as well. So but anyway, I think it will be good to just have a quick introduction. I know as a committee, the meetings are every other month. This committee used to be meeting only 3 or 4 times a year and would report or would kind of advise I think it was the Arts, Recreation and Community Services community, and then it would go to council. Those changes to the terms of reference have been made in 2022-2023 through this committee because we really wanted to have this table with housing and homelessness obviously on the forefront to have a direct kind of advisory role towards council. We are quite aware that, over the last little while, we do provide standing update reports with lots of information, and this committee is obviously providing great feedback and questions on that. But we also really, as staff across the corporation, would like to have some input on what items, in addition to some of the things that we think would be beneficial to be brought forward to this table, because obviously you're bringing a great expertise to staff and kind of the various work that we do. Typically, through the clerk's office and housing and social services staff, we create an annual work plan with kind of a bit of a idea of these are the items that we want to bring forward. These are the items that we would like to discuss or get advice on as a committee. This year, typically that just comes to the committee and the committee says yes or no, or we'll add things. This year, we actually wanted to take a little bit of a different approach and use this meeting to get some of your feedback. We did, in the report that's in front of you, provide some links to the current council strategic plan and some of the key kind of strategic priorities that council is working on or staff is working on. And of course, We anticipate that some of those will come back to you in the next 12 months or so. If you that's something we can discuss today. But we also definitely want to hear from you. Are there any other areas that you would like to focus your attention on? Very quickly, and then I'll stop talking. What we really for sure want to bring forward in 2024 to early 2025 is an update on the end of operating, end of mortgages process that we're working on with in the social housing sector. That will be a lot of information and maybe some feedback, but also just to update this committee on the work. We also will be bringing probably later this year an update on the homelessness system review process and potentially some updated recommendations or next steps. I know that's been a big topic of conversation. But we also pointed out in this document some opportunities to look at more cross-departmental input. So for instance, we're working with our arts and culture departments on arts or artist housing and kind of solutions. So that will be great to get some input on. And we're looking obviously at climate change and how we can look at kind of programs and incentives in affordable housing and some feedback from this committee. So I'll stop talking because I can keep going. Really want to pass it back to the chair to have some input from you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So Ms. Collier has her hand up first. If there are any questions or comments with regards to this report, please go ahead.
Thank you so much. Ruth, thank you. And to your team and yourself, thank you for everything that you guys do. I know it takes a lot of work and a lot of heart. I will say I was on the working group that had revised our terms and reference and mandate in 2022-2023. And one thing that we had set was that there would be a meeting where we would hear from service providers, like a vast number of them that are in this doing this work. And I think we'd done it several years ago. It was incredibly powerful and beautiful, and that synergy that came from it was really important. So my question is, do we have that upcoming? I think we do have that upcoming, and I'm really looking forward to that. I think having all of these various organizations together to speak to us and let us know what's going well, what isn't, what are they experiencing? I feel like that's really critical to hear, and not just, for us, but for everybody to be able to hear that, especially now that we live in this world that we have meetings like this that can be posted in this way. So, the greater public. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, I see Councillor Tozo. Councillor Tozo?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. One thing I'd like to throw out as maybe a potentially good idea would be an informal meeting. There's a lot of talent around this table, and I think, at least I can only speak for myself, I can't speak for Councillor Ridge, but it might be kind of interesting to get some of your perspectives in a non-formalized way. I really enjoy the agenda, the structure, and the access there, but having sat on a committee who appointed most people on this committee, there's a lot of talent here, and I think having some informal conversations would be of value. Certainly, I would find that. So, Greg, Councillor Ridge, that might be out of order from this discussion. I see Ian's hand up. And I would just also like to highlight, you don't have to give me a look like that. But I also think that it would be worthwhile to have other service providers. I agree with what Jackie said. I think that there's a lot of value in having people from different communities. I found that briefing from KHFC really fascinating and a really good input on the stuff that this city is currently involved. But those are my two bits of feedback.
Thank you very much, Councillor Tozo. Mr. Chair, or Mr. Clerk, I saw that you had your hand up. Would you like to add anything?
Yes, I would like just to clarify that members of the committee are permitted to meet individually, but you cannot meet in an informal setting where you could potentially reach quorum and then make business decisions. So any decisions or anything advancing the work of the committee should be done at this format and in the public view. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clerk. I appreciate that guidance. River, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, it is unfortunate that we can't have that. I agree with Councillor Tozo. I feel like if we had more time to kind of talk and workshop this, it would be great. But it is what it is. I also just wanted to ask, how much is the, and maybe Ruth can answer this, how much is the Get Involved Kingston platform involved in these decisions, or how much has it been involved historically as well?
Thank you.
There you go.
Oh, thank you for that question. It really depends on projects. Sometimes we utilize Get Involved to get public feedback on issues and topics. For instance, on the sleeping cabin project, we used Get Involved quite extensively. We don't do it, it's not consistently for everything, but it's definitely a tool that, the committee, how staff often utilize engagement or utilize feedback is use various mechanisms. So for instance, moving forward, if we do want to use this committee's feedback, we will use this meeting. We will also potentially at the same time do a Get Involved or, community consultation process. It's typically multiple factors, but the committee could certainly advise staff as well to provide or to use Get Involved as well if that has not been used for a certain topic. So that's a bit of a general answer, but it's not like a very clear process set out. It really depends on the situation.
Yeah, I think that there is power in data, and as a person who mainly works off of lived experience, I think there are only so many of us at this table, and everyone is an expert in their own experience with homelessness, with this city's policies, and how it affects them individually. I think when we're making these big decisions, especially about housing, we should be maybe generating more data and more feedback. I think it's a hot topic, but it is important to hear more voices.
Thank you, River. Oh, Director Nordegraff, you have your hand up.
Thank you so much for that, River. And I think for some of the items that we obviously would like the committee's input on, such as, for instance, the homelessness system recommendation piece. I know that was a very big task a few years ago and the committee was involved, but circling back on that and updating that will also involve, obviously, the most crucial part is, how are individuals with living or lived experience, experiencing programs and initiatives. So absolutely. But I do think this committee definitely can continue to bring that forward if at some point we are not doing that as staff.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions or comments from members of the committee? Okay. Seeing none, are there any members of the public who would wish to speak to this report? Mr. Clerk.
So I can confirm there are currently 3 members of the public in the public viewing gallery. If you wish to speak to this item of business, please raise your virtual hand in Zoom. It is located at the bottom of your screen, and they'll let me know you would like to speak. We'll just give them a quick moment, Mr. Chair. I'm not seeing any movement, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Clerk. If that's the case, then we'll move on to item B, which when you have one monitor can be fun to navigate. Standing update report, February 2024. The report of the Commissioner of Community Services has been attached. Are there any comments from staff with regards to this report?
Thank you, and to you, Chair. I think you're used to the format right now. We have obviously provided an overview of various data sets from in the various areas, and some updates on programming, some shelter and overnight drop-in services that have expanded, which we're very grateful for. We also have provided you with some year-end data on some of the use of certain services. So certainly happy to answer any questions, or Amy or Mitch, who are on the call with me as well. Similar to social housing, again, a good overview, hopefully, of where we are with the wait list and some of the benefits that have been provided. And then in the last area, as you're used to as well, just an update of all the housing projects that are in the pipeline. And I will also share with you that and I know this is not in the reports, but I anticipate that this has reached your desk at some point. We were successful with the Housing Accelerator funding application as a city. So we have received $27 million to invest in housing. This is not just affordable housing, but it will really help our community to really accelerate some housing developments. We're excited to kind of keep you in the loop on that once that rolls out. But really kind of a bit of a general update, and we are ready to answer any questions or any follow-ups you might have based on the reports.
Thank you very much, Director Nordegraff. Are there any questions or comments from the members of the committee? River, please go ahead.
I would just like to invite the opportunity for you to speak about that funding a bit more and what it entails, anything like that. I'm just interested. I'd love to hear more.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Great question. I think it might be helpful through the clerk's office to share the council report with some additional details, because I will be honest that I don't have it in front of me. So I cannot speak to all the details, but really in kind of essence, we will be using this funding to support various initiatives. Some of them will be really more planning focused. So how do we build faster? How do we support with the infrastructure that's required to be able to get housing built? There are some components in there. For instance, we have the secondary suites program right now as part of the community. We've been quite successful with creating secondary suites, but we also would like to focus on how do we get them built with more affordability measures. So we will be reviewing that as part of this grant. And I think overall, it's just really the focus is how do we build faster? How do we have more incentives to build? How do we, and of course, there will be some affordable housing component to it as well. But what I will do, and not to not respond to your question, River, but I think through the clerk's office, if that's okay, we can send out the link to the council report, which I believe went to council in the fall. And I should say, sorry, just as a, we did apply for more funding. We did not get the whole ask, but I do believe we were in like the top, the highest kind of, we have received quite a significant amount if you compare it to other cities. So I would say kudos really to many of my colleagues across the corporation that have worked really hard on putting this together.
Okay, thank you very much, Director Nordegraff. Was there anything else you wanted to ask, River, or was that it? Sorry.
No, I think I'm good. That's wonderful. I'll definitely be looking way more into that. Thank you.
Okay, very good. I saw that Mrs. Bailey had her hand up. Do you wish to ask a question?
I did have a question, but it might have been addressed in an earlier meeting. I met with the director of the Homes for Heroes development that's happening here, and just bearing in mind that at the last by name count, we had 3 self-identified veterans who were homeless. I'm just wondering if we have plans for 20 identified veterans to be going into these houses, or if we are going to become a regional area for veteran housing.
Director Nordegraff, would you wish to speak to that, or is that information available at this time? I'm not.
I thank you through you, Councillor Rage. Great question. I know that the Homes for Heroes project is about to open, or has maybe already opened the doors to a few tenants. I will be quite frank that I am not 100% sure, but I know they're really close. I know we have had some conversations about their tenancy planning and how they're approaching this, but I don't have specific details on that at this point. Again, we can also, if that's okay with the clerk's office, we can follow up on that information for sure. Yeah, I see Ian is nodding, so I think we're good. We'll provide that.
Very good. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions from members of the committee? Okay, seeing none, I would just like to ask a quick question, Director Nordegraff, and it has to do with the by names list. So I've noticed that the numbers have stabilized, would be potentially not the correct term, but they're hovering around the range of 520 to 540 now in 523 as of December 2023. Do you have any thoughts as to why the numbers have remained relatively stable during this period? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rich. Great question. I will start, and I might have my colleague Amy jump in as well. For those of you that have been following the by name list, and even before that, the point in time count approach, which is kind of the first start of how we're measuring or trying to get our best handle on the number of folks that are unhoused or precariously housed. I would say, I hope to say, and we will need to probably give this a little bit more time, that we have now been able as a system, and again, kudos to all of our partners that are working on putting people into the homelessness information system, because that is really the key opportunity to really measure kind of the needs in our community. But I would say, I think we have stabilized because we have now almost like covered through the different agencies, those individuals that are accessing service. You will also see on the list that or in the report that we continue to see in and outflow of folks that are, obviously coming into the system, folks that are being housed or leaving the community, or there's a variety of reasons. So I don't have the magic answer on we know exactly why. I think we're just getting closer and closer to a better, I would say, coordinated access. And we are also able to continue to provide services for those that are able to access services. I think every community has been working on with the by name list now for a few years. We're seeing that initial really big spike because everybody is starting to utilize it, and that's initially a bit of a, oh gosh, what are we seeing? Now we're seeing it stable, and we can actually have a better understanding of the different demographics, the different needs, the different kind of groups that need supports. I don't know if Amy has anything to add. I think this will be an ongoing kind of data point that we'll continue to share with the committee, with the community, and we're also hoping that we can dive into it deeper with more specific, I would say, questions. We also have now a dedicated data staff, which we did not have before. So I think that also will really help in kind of continue to really focus on this number and creating services that respond to that number and be more say specific. For instance, we see an increased number of older adults in the system that have maybe specific needs. So how do we create services around that? So sorry, I'm going on a tangent here, but
no, thank you very much. That's very helpful. Mrs. Gibson, do you have anything to add to Director Nordegraff's response?
No, thank you. Nothing further to add.
Okay, thank you very much. I see Councillor Toza, you have your hand up. Please proceed.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Chair, through you. I just had to take myself off mute, which after years of Zoom, I'm still figuring out how to do. So a question on the by names list. One is, what's the registration process to get people on the by names list? I'm curious about that. And the second one is what proportion of our in-house population do you think are captured by the by names list? I'm sure it's larger. Do you have any idea by how much, or is this a good idea of our total in-house population in Kingston? Thank you.
Director Nordegraff.
I think Ms. Gibson can speak around some of the how people get on the list. Again, in a nutshell, it really is kind of folks accessing services, and then it's part of them accessing the service that they will be also added to the list. And I know, I think it might even, I'm wondering if it might be actually a good opportunity to do a quick briefing next time we have a meeting, just to walk through it, because I do think there's a lot more to it than Amy and I just chatting through this. I think this is really interesting and important information. So it is really kind of folks access service, and they will be part of that coordinated access. Sometimes people will not necessarily, some people don't want to be added, but we also have a way of kind of measuring without actually having the individual information on there. And sorry, the second part of your question was, Councillor Tozo.
Yeah, what portion of the by names list do you think actually captures the amount of unhoused people? Do you think it's pretty close, or yeah?
I hope we're close. Again, I do think we have seen when we were doing PITS counts, point in time counts years ago, and when we started with this, we were in the 200s. So we're obviously really seeing this increase, but within this number, we have folks that are, as mentioned in the report, actually unhoused, so living rough, but we also have folks that are couch surfing or living precariously or living, obviously utilizing shelter services. So there is a chronic component and there is a episodic component of this list. I guess maybe a little bit back to Councillor Ridge's question. I'm hopeful that this is kind of as close as we can get. There will continue to be in and outflow on this list, but I do think that we will need to continue to really work on, and I mean, this is essential, continue to work on prevention, continue to work on homelessness, or keeping people housed will continue to be really a crucial item. And I know we will, we may not have seen the brunt of it yet with some big affordability pressures in the system.
Very good. Thank you very much. River, you have your hand up.
Awesome, thank you. So a bit of a two-parter, because I realized I had a question that came up while Ruth was talking. And it kind of has to do with the people who are in like different situations with homelessness, so couch surfing. Those may be harder to capture. I guess my question is, I have a bit of an idea of this, but how does a person, what kind of services, other than the obvious being shelters, how does a person interact and how do they get onto that list? Is it like a consensual, like you sign this form or you check off on this, like you give consent for like your information to be collected? And then how does that follow them along? I know that this has been kind of talked about before, but I'm just curious, like, are there services you wouldn't think of that would be able to put someone on a by name list, for instance?
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, I can answer that question. So River, right now, currently we have 9 providers within our system that enter information into HIFIS. And so those providers would be anyone from a shelter provider to outreach services. So when an individual is accessing any level of service, whether they are contacted through street outreach or whether they've entered into the shelter system, like tonight, for instance, they would then provide their consent to be entered into the HIFIS system. And then that information then is put into the overall system. The 2 agencies that we currently work with, the 2 providers that don't input into HIFIS, provide that information to us manually, and then we put it into any type of utilization or add to that we can on their behalf. So I would say it's an actual true reflection right now of the current state.
As a follow-up, and I hope this is public information, sorry. Is AMHS connected? Are they able to utilize that system?
Yes, they are. And they are part of the outreach program that does input into the system.
Awesome. Okay. Because I was kind of worried about like it not just being specifically housing services, but then like, let's say someone comes in and says like, I'm couch surfing, and maybe they're able to be involved with that, right? So that's wonderful. Thank you.
Director Nordegraaff, I see you have your hand up.
Thank you, and I really appreciate that question, and through you, Councillor Ridge. I think it is important to note though that there's obviously always privacy considerations. So we do have the Homelessness Information System, or HIFIS. I know we use lots of acronyms. Will track certain data sets and pieces of information. So if an individual is accessing multiple services, we can, and that's been tracked, we can kind of see somebody's journey and kind of understand that. But obviously the healthcare information is not part of our system. So magic wands, we definitely would love to see kind of a more coordinated system, but this is the first step towards really kind of having a homelessness system where we have all these 9 different providers and more to come, inputting the same data. And if one client is utilizing multiple services, we will be able to share that, or we can see that as well. And if I say we, city staff are actually not necessarily seeing that in we're not able to see the details of everybody's journey. We just look at the numbers.
Through you, Chair, if that's okay.
Yes, go ahead.
Just a final follow-up. How much public information, like let's say on the City of Kingston website, is there about the by name list? I'm sure I could Google and find out, but just trying to think of like how the public can get involved or how the public can see what this is, right?
Thank you. Great questions. I might have Mitchell jump in here as well. The city has been working with Queens, and there has been a dashboard that has been established with BNL or by name list data and other data sets. I believe I'm not 100% sure if it's like super up to date, but we have been, it's been this data integrity process that we've continued to build, but we do have a public facing dashboard that's available. Mitch, do you want to jump in and make sure I'm not making this up?
No, thanks for the question. That's accurate. So yeah, the Open Forum Kingston website is available, and we work with our data team here at the city to to input data on a monthly basis, so that not only is it updated in terms of the by name list, but also our social housing waitlist numbers and childcare and early on and homemaking, as well as social assistance numbers. They're all inputted, and we've been working closely with Queens to get that up to date. So we recently just had a conversation, so you may not see it reflective of January or December, but that is coming. But you do have that ability to look across, all different data sets that you could, almost imagine across the city, and use that form to dig deep. And it provides a summary of what you're looking at, and it's quite detailed, and it continues to be built out. So it's a great resource for the community to stay involved and informed on real-time data that they can access throughout the city.
It's more than I could have asked for. That's awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions from members of the committee? Okay, seeing none. Are there any members of the public present who wish to speak to this report? Mr. Clerk.
Again, through you, Mr. Chair, there are 3 members of the public who are in the public viewing gallery. If you wish to speak to this item, please raise your virtual hand in Zoom. I am seeing no movement, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Moving on then. There are no motions. There are no notices of motion. Is there any other business? Okay, seeing none. There's no correspondence. The date of the next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, April 11th at 1 p.m. And can I have a motion to adjourn, please? Can I have a mover for that? Councillor Tozo, and I see seconded by Nikki. All those in favor? Thank you very much. It is 1:36. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great day.